Hello everyone. We are live on YouTube and LinkedIn here, bringing you another exciting episode of the Top Innovator Series. This is where we dive into proven leadership ideas, game-changing strategies, and of course the brilliant minds behind them. My name is Josef Martens and I'm thrilled to introduce today's guest. With us today is Louis Bardov. Louis is the CTO and co-founder of Heart Health and Phenometrics. Before these roles, he held several other tech executives positions, including at Match.com, Raytheon, and JCPenney. Louis, it's a real pleasure to have you with us today.
My pleasure.
We would love to hear about your leadership journey. You're highly accomplished, super successful, Louis, and we'd love to hear from you your reflection on that success. What do you think are some of the key ingredients that got you to where you are today?
I think the most important ingredient were the people that I've worked with, both those that have mentored me and those that I've mentored in return. So, one of my prides and joys is when I'm able to actually give it forward and mentor, younger engineers, and in many cases now they perform the same role that I do. Right? Because they have been very successful.
Talk to me about some of the advice that you got from other people then. What was really important for you? What shifted something for you, or what made a difference in the advice that you received?
An interesting one was never burn a bridge.
Okay.
And it was a very, very apropos. Even if you find yourself in a difficult situation, try to find a way to extricate yourself without burning that bridge to where all the parties are at least not hurt, not in any way affected by your departure or whatever it is. So that one was very important. Also, part of what I said, give it forward, and listen to your teams. So especially, I learned this at Match. Coming in, it was a very difficult time, and while we have our opinions, our ideas of the way to do things, listen to the people that are on the ground and use their knowledge to actually move forward and develop a plan. So don't basically don't have a closed mind. Keep an open mind. Listen to everyone. Form your opinion, right? And when you make a decision, stick to it, right? Don't flip flop. Don't. We know people, so don't flip flop. Just make up your mind. You may succeed, you may fail, right? When you fail, you learn and you move on. When you succeed, you pat yourself on the back, and then you take the next opportunity or the next challenge.
Yeah.
Right? That's why, and being a founder is very important. That's very important for being a founder, right? Because as founders, we've had successes, we've had failures.
Right.
And you have to learn from it, take your licks, and move on.
Yeah. Sticking to your decision is an interesting one, because I can really see a balance there. On the one side, right, there's a call to be agile, adapt, and all of that, right, which implies, of course, well, maybe change something. And on the other hand, you can't be too adaptive, otherwise you're just chasing the wind all the time. How do you find that balance? How do you know when to stick to your guns versus the environment has changed, change is needed?
This one is a hard one because you have to take the things that are under your control, right? Those are easy because you control them. Those things that are not under your control may cause you to shift, but all things being equal, you want to come as close as possible to what your original idea or plan was, right? But it boils down to project planning, technology planning, right? And making and stick and back still sticking to your decisions, right? If you decide on I'm going to go with this technology, trying to switch technologies in midstream is going to hurt you. It's going to kill your project, kill your product, right? So in some cases, you just have to draw a line in the sand and say, okay, we're gonna be live on this date, and let's do what it takes, right? We may have a technology penalty coming, but we need to generate revenue. Yeah. So let's be live by this date, and then we're going to take the technology penalty once we're live.
Yeah, yeah, and then see what change needs to be made to that to stick to that.
Exactly, and refactor and you know, no initial technology remains fixed, right? It's always going to change. I mean, look at, you know, Moore's law now is being violated by large language models, right? The speed at which things change is just incredible. So, you know, just stick with it as much as you can, and then refactor.
Yep. I would also like to dig a little bit deeper into what you said earlier about the not burning bridges. And I would love to dig deeper in the context of technologists. Here is again the sort of the challenge that I see in that. Technologists tend to think in black and white sometimes, right? In being right or being wrong, and being opinionated about that. So when you're coming from that mindset, someone is either right or wrong, then it's easy to burn these bridges, believing that we have some kind of subject matter high ground, or maybe even a moral high ground in some respect, right? Because we're right on something. How do you get across to other people that this is maybe not the best way of handling it? How do you get that message across? Don't burn bridges, and maybe be a bit softer than a complete black and white approach to things.
Oy.
Okay, half an hour counting now.
It's actually one word. Very simple, one word: maturity. It's about maturity, right? When you're young, or when you're dealing with young people who have that mentality, you know, I'm sorry to say this, but you have to manipulate them. you have to change their thought processes, or adjust their thought processes through constant communication, and which is the other word, right? But it's maturity and communication. So you communicate in order to develop maturity, and through maturity, you start seeing the gray, right?
Yep.
But you have to convince them, and sometimes it's a little bit of a psychological game of convincing them that, you know, maybe this is the better way. You know, here, look at this birdie, and and this is gonna work out.
Okay, got it.
And if it doesn't work out, it's not your fault, right? So that's the other thing. It's the fear of failure that's actually makes it very black and white for some people.
Oh, interesting.
Right? Okay. So by removing that fear of failure, or limiting its effect, you basically permit them to maybe see some of the other options and build that maturity.
Got it. Okay. Interesting to see that connection there. Yeah. Now, Louis, we talked about your past and the leadership success in the past that led you to today. I would love to take a look at where you are at the moment. And this is not a question about roles or companies or products. It's a question about leadership development again, and our own growth. What is an area where you feel, I would love to grow in this area? This is an area where you feel like there is still room. There is some next level that you can achieve.
So I've always been hands-on, right? So I write code, I do stuff, you know, gotta keep the brain moving. The So from a leadership perspective, it's interesting because what I'm seeing is the role of AI and these large language models and what AI is going to do. So it's really an interesting time for me because I'm looking at how are we going to become slaves to the models, or are the models slaves to us?
Okay.
And I'm not using the word AI in this case because I don't think it's true AI. I know how they work. So, and until they have true conscience, it's not really artificial intelligence, right? But what I'm seeing is that we are slowly moving towards the models are driving us. And I see that in everyday usage, right? From using the Alexa device at home to the fact that we don't Google things anymore. We chat GPT them.
Yep.
Right. But from a leadership perspective is how do we lead people in this new era of now, 40, 50, 60% of our code today is actually generated by the machine, right? Our job has turned more into testers, validators, and definers of what it is we wanted to write for us. Now, at the point where it starts writing it for itself, that's when we have a problem. But until then, it's how do we lead people in this new paradigm of, it's not like you have to go and write this piece of functionality.
Yeah.
It's how do you actually define and validate that this piece of functionality that we need it written actually does what it does, it's correct, and from that the same perspective, how do we reward and advance people, right? Because you start with a junior engineer, right? And they're gonna, today they're gonna start using the AI. They're already using the AI in school. They're teaching it in school, right? Whereas in the past, you could look at performance. You developed this functionality and you did this and you were great and you had this invention. Great, you're now a senior or a lead or whatever, right? But how do you do that now in the world of AI? How do you how do you promote, right? When do you promote the machine that wrote the code that solved the problem?
It's a senior machine now.
Yeah, but but as a leader, who develops people, right? Basically, my job is to bring on the next generations, and how do I do that as a leader? From a business leadership, that's easy, right? Business is business. You sell stuff, you make money, you sell more stuff. That's business. But from a people perspective, which is I'm a leader of people, how do we take it now?
So what do you think, Louis? Speculate. What do you think a tech leader does differently in 3 years, in 5 years? Where do you think are the key differences if we had this conversation in 5 years? How would you work differently?
In 5 years, I think we're not going to be too far off.
Okay.
But in 10, 15, it's going to be something completely different because what the entire curriculum of universities of these schools is going to change, right? And we're already seeing a shift. At least I'm seeing a huge shift when it comes to the human participation in the development of technology. it's shrinking at a incredible rate. If you look, and part of it has to do with, the offshoring concepts of software. All of that is going away, right? The new offshore is called ChatGPT or Claude or whatever model is generating your code. We don't need people to actually write code or we need people to think of usages and how to take advantage of the models and the AI in order to produce better products, better things, right? But you're going to see a complete paradigm shift here in the next 10, 15 years where the concept of outsourcing is just going to go away unless it's some menial work that machines cannot do or it becomes too expensive for machines to do.
Interesting. Okay. How do you prepare for that? How would you suggest someone prepares for that so that they are ahead of the curve?
I don't know. I'll be honest. I don't know how to tell you to prepare. Just be ready because the paradigm is going to change. So what you have to look for is those functions that are still going to be difficult for the machine to do, right? So the concept of invention, of developing knowledge that can be used in multiple domains, I think is going to become important because the golden age of software development, I think, is going to, in 10 to 15 years, at least from the perspective of, the number of people that are needed is going to end.
Okay. Yeah.
Again, it's only
and
my
maybe
opinion.
and you started talking earlier, right at the beginning. We talked about curiosity as one of the most important traits, or one of the contributors to success. And it sounds to me like that's maybe still the most important trait that is needed for a leader. Then
Absolutely.
Yeah. Let me ask you one more question, Louis, and then we'll wrap it up. When you look at peers, when you look at other tech executives, what is something that you think many are missing? What is something that is widely ignored or many just don't see something? Is there something where you feel like others are just not seeing something?
Well, at the point where at my level, a lot of those missings are corrected. But early on, I learned that it's not about the technology, it's about selling it, right? At the end of the day, you have to sell it, right? It has to perform a function either that does some benefit, but even if it's nonprofit or whatever, you still have to sell it. You have to have something that is marketable, because otherwise, what is the purpose? Right? So it has to have a purpose that is somehow marketable. And it doesn't necessarily have to be money, but it has to be a purpose, right? And what I've noticed a lot of younger ideologues, just have this idea and they build it, but they have no idea how to sell it. Now, some are lucky, that figure out how to sell it and make a lot of money, right? Look at Zuckerberg, and you look at all those guys, right? I mean, they started with, "Hey, I want a date," right? That's where it all started. I want to meet the girls. But that's the beginning of Facebook, right? Right. They wanted to meet girls, so they created this little website.
Yeah.
For people to communicate.
Yeah.
But, eventually they figured it out. But they didn't have that vision in the beginning, right? Whereas these days, we're a lot more mature and we're like, okay, before we build something, before we spend a bunch of time and money building something, let's figure out what we're going to do with it and how we're going to sell it, how we're going to market it, how we're going to turn it into something that's more than just a weekend project.
Yeah. An interesting example, right? Because like you say, the value or the monetization may not have been top of mind. Well, the value was there. You're right. Not the monetization, but a clear value proposition.
Yeah, there was a value prop.
Yeah, no doubt. Louis, thank you so much. This was awesome. Really appreciated your insight, and I'm sure many will benefit from that. Thank you so much for being with us today. For everyone else who's out there, remember to like and subscribe and share the video with others. And we look forward to seeing you again the next time on the Top Innovator Series. Until then, keep your brain cells active.